What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy Friday. Happy opening day. I will be out there at the light with my family. I'm sure a lot of you all will be out there as well as the Miami Hurricanes baseball team opens the season against Lehigh. I think it's going to be an outstanding season. We talked to JD Arteaga yesterday, which we do every single week on the JD Arteaga show. You can check that out on YouTube, but very, very excited for the season. Recruiting always happening. Football recruiting. We will talk about a couple prospects that have caught our attention and they have significant Miami interest and have been visited by Miami coaches. Want to put them on your radar, as well as a breakdown of the nickel position in Coach Heatherman's defense. Coach Heatherman lost to his good buddy yesterday, Coach Haynes from Indiana, in the Broyles Award. Want to talk about the nickel in his defense, as well as some of the candidates to play the nickel position. We'll talk to the Oracle of the Ozarks, Lance Roffers, on that one. First, want to shout out our friends Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
D, good morning.
Morning, man. How you feeling? I know you are the light, so big time for you and for all the Canes baseball fans.
I am the light, but I am also love. I am love in its greatest form. So, and when you talk about love always has its price, and the price may be beating the rush of February 14th. So, I will not be at the light tonight.
Good decision that as far as the timing on the 13th, I haven't figured that one out yet. I heard there's this thing called Galentine's Day. I just got a text from our friend Jose. There's Galentine's Day. I guess it's for the gals that aren't on going out on Valentine's Day.
I'm very curious at what that meant, but
I just heard about it literally before we went on the air. I hope it's not something bad, because that's what I got a bunch of texts about Galentine's Day. I'm assuming there might be a Palentine's Day for males without Valentine's Day dates. So I don't know. I mean, I would say if you don't have a date, head out to the light. You know, no need for Galentine's or Palentine's. You just go right out to the light. Roy Pinto says, late as always. Were we like 30 seconds late? We've been on.
Hey, Roy, like I tell people, man, I appreciate you waiting around the extra 2 minutes. And if you don't want to watch, you can get out of here. And I know D-Money won't like that, but I will patronize our viewers.
No, we want everybody on here. Flankerton says, I don't see Messi throwing out the first pitch tonight.
It's too big of an event for him. It's too small of an event for him.
Well, I mean, Malachi Tony be throwing out the first pitch. I think the problem with Messi throwing out the first pitch, he might not get it to the plate. He might have some trouble throwing that thing. I don't know if he knows how to use his hands, but that'd be the challenge for old Messi.
So bad, D. It's so bad, man. It. At first, I was letting it slide, man, but I don't know, man. This is it's kind of gross.
And then the song swept the streets, and you're facing it all the time. It's hard to ignore. With the way that song "Malachi is the King" is spread, that country tune, as you called it. But anyways, man, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit of recruiting. We'll talk some football. This recruiting season, is really, really interesting to me, Pete, because we're looking at 27. We're looking at 28. Guys are reclassifying. We'll get into that more when we talk about Champ Mons, but the reclassifying thing has gotten huge. It's kind of crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of things. It's hard to know what's the actual class that they actually belong in, D, because for the longest, guys were getting kind of held back in the earlier years, and the reclassifying kind of like just putting them back in what their real class should be. And then there's cases where that's not what it is. Like, that's not what it was for Malachi Tony. Obviously, he came in here early. So there's different cases with different guys, but it definitely makes things tough to track.
Apparently, Galentine's Day started on the TV show Parks and Rec. I want to even ask you if you've seen that show. I haven't seen it. It's women that get together for a women's only celebration, basically. We need a Palentine's Day for the boys.
I'm good on that one. That's what I call a night at Duffy's, D.
That's right. That's exactly right. Palentine's Day. And maybe
call Thursday night at Duffy's.
They should have a Galentine's Day celebration at Duffy's and then just invite a bunch of dudes there to crash it and see if we can get some pairings. You know what I mean? Get everybody in one space. Really, it'd be a great place to meet women, the Galentine's Day, because they're single and they're congregated. But I don't know if that's the best and the brightest. So, we got to find, who knows how this thing works out. We got the man, Lance Roffers, the Oracle of the Ozarks. Let's just bring him in right now. Lance, where's he at? Get him in here, Pete. What's up with do they celebrate Galentine's Day in Southwest Missouri?
Yeah, so I was raring to jump in. The Galentine's Day is it's your comment was not yours, but your commenter that popped up is dead on, right? It's just another in a long line of excuses for women to get together and have brunch and drink mimosas and day drink essentially, and riff on the dudes. I went to my wife had one last Sunday, and I was there because and so I was the only dude.
Wait.
Oh! It was a lot of fun.
Hold on.
Holy moly. It's a Lancentine's Day, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Lancentine's.
That's right.
So your wife, despite having a Valentine presumably already, went to the Galentine's Day thing, and you went yourself. What were you doing there?
Well, she wanted to show them what they were all missing out on. So. But yeah, it's just a big event to drink mimosas and day drink for the women. And Pete's dead on with his Palantine too, right? That's just with the boys, right? That's just that's poker night or casino night, or maybe some of the establishments around the fine city of Miami that athletes like to partake in. That as well could be your Palentine's night, and you keep that part of things to yourself. But
wait, without breaking confidences, what were they talking about on Galentine's? Like, what was the?
All the dudes.
So nothing changes when these women are 40. It's the same deal.
Yeah. We're all the same. We forget we're no longer 20 or whatever, and we just age and do the same things.
How do they think Miami will fare without Bane and Mesidor next year?
Yeah, they really think that the pass rush will probably be solid this year, but they're a little worried about how we're going to set the edge on the strong side.
I agree, gals. By the way, I wasn't planning to do this read now, but listen, if you're having a Galentine's Day celebration or a Palentine's Day celebration, or, if you're like Lance and you are attending the Galentine's Day celebration as a male, you'd be the most popular husband at the Galentine's Day celebration when you bring in some ZONINs. How about that? The number one Prosecco in the country. Look at that right there. That's not Galentine's. That's an actual jam right there. That's an actual party with ZONIN Prosecco. As you see from the blue label, that is straight from Italy, one of the more awarded Proseccos in the world. Best Buy by wine enthusiasts, 90+ points from James Suckling. Again, this is the ZONIN family in Italy. It has been happening for a long time now, made its way stateside with our guy Rob, huge Canes fan. You can get it at ABC Fine Wine and Spirits, Jensen Liquors, Publix, but it doesn't have to just be South Florida. It is across the country. Total Wine. You got Total Wines over there in Southwest Missouri, Lance?
Yeah, I was just about to jump in and say my wife had some ZONIN Prosecco last night at happy hour. So
let's go. Now we're talking. Shout out.
We have a good time around the Roppers household,
Shout out to Dr. Roppers and ZONIN. All right, so now let's zone in on the nickel position, Lance, because, and I'm not even sure I'm using the right terminology. I may not be. I should have known this after a year, but basically, I don't know what you call overhang apex, the nickel, strong, old school strong side linebacker. This position has had so many different iterations, Lance. And then you look at the traditional nickel, which we think of as like the 5'9", feisty, quicker than fast corner that can tackle. And then I look at the Super Bowl and I see number 3, and the guy's 6'3", running 4'3", 220 something pounds and doing all that other stuff. Of course, Keontae Scott, great year for us. So just talk about this position, maybe a little bit about the evolution of it and just kind of how it fits into what Coach Heatherman's trying to do.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, right? The position has continued to evolve, just like defensive football has continued to evolve, right? What you saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago with some of the spread offenses, some of the pace, Saban coming out and saying, hey, I've got to change, right? I've got to do some of these things differently. That was the offense kind of moving ahead of what defenses were doing in the past, right? Where things were a little more static. And I can kind of get into some of the schematic differences and changes here in a minute as well. But essentially in the past, for defenses to try and match up and get away from some of that palms up defense that Kirby Smart, he coined that phrase about 15 years ago, where his defenders would have their palms up because they didn't know how to line up, against the pace of what was going on with the Ole Misses and some of those teams, Washington states that were running, the pace under the Hal Money system. And they didn't know exactly where to line up, right? Because used to be the nickel would line up to the passing strength, right? And so what would happen is you have to wait for the offense to line up to identify what's going to be the passing strength of their formation, right?
Passing strength different than the traditional strong side. Just to explain to people real quick, passing strength versus strong side, weak side, that they might remember from high school football or remember the Titans or whatever.
Yeah. So a lot of times, old school football is going to use the hashes, right, to determine, what's strong side and what's weak side or backside. Nowadays, offenses are dictating based on how they want to force the defense to adjust to them, right? And so they can align their passing strength into the boundary, right? In the past, the short side of the field essentially is what we would call the boundary, would be where you're going to have maybe your X receiver ISO, where you've just got one receiver on that side, and then your strong side, your run strength is going to be to the other side, right? Well, we saw it with Ole Miss, and something we talked about on this
where there's more room to run.
Yep, the field side. Yeah.
Yep.
So we talked quite a bit on this podcast about how Ole Miss really likes to run into the boundary because it breaks so many of your rules, so much of your alignment. It makes your defenders have to kind of think and identify where individuals are. And they were very explosive all year with running into the boundary by breaking defenses' rules, who still kind of have some of those archaic rules where they're trying to identify and line up first, right? What Miami does, in a long-winded way of getting into, which I like to do, to get into a segue on what Miami's defense is doing with their nickel, right? They are essentially just aligning it to the boundary side or the field side, whichever one they decide, right? And that means that individual can have responsibilities depending on what the offense is doing. So to talk about some of that evolution that you talked about, where it used to be a 5'9", quicker than fast guy, who could tackle a little bit. Now that individual comes in all shapes and sizes, and they need to have multiple abilities, right? To be able to have a Nick Emanwari, like you talked about, a 6'3" kind of alien type, right? That's kind of like the prototype that you're going to see in the NFL, right? Where a guy is basically the size of a linebacker. He plays safety and can cover like a big nickel, right? Like a big cornerback. He's going to die slow or lose slow is kind of what you want those individuals to do in one-on-one coverage, right? Basically just be able to stick with them long enough that either your pressure packages or what you're doing where you have an advantage, right? Because if you're going to have a Nick Emanwari at the nickel, you've got to be gaining an advantage elsewhere, right? Otherwise, it would be a net lose for the defense. What Miami did with Keontae Scott, and why I was honestly, I really was probably one of the most excited people about Keontae Scott, writing about him and talking about him when he came here, even though he was something like the 1000th rated portal player, was because of his specific skill set and what it was able to do for this defense. You could see it on film, right? The young generation will say he's got that dog in him. He's feisty, he's tough, right? Because Heatherman will actually use his nickel in the run fits. So a lot of times in older defensive football, your nickel would be what's called a force player. And it's just like it sounds, right? That player is just trying to stay outside, wider than the runner or receiver, whatever it is in that case, and force them to cut back inside, right? So he's just got to stay outside shoulder. He's got to have leverage on whatever the blocker is. He's got a mirror and just basically try and pinch, right? And so that's going to be just a real simple what your force player is doing. With Keontae Scott, though, and what Heatherman does with his nickel is he actually inserts him into the fit. So now that individual is responsible for the C gap. And the C gap's going to be outside of the tackle, right? So, you kind of have your traditional gaps, right? You've got your center, and to either side of him is going to be the A. You've got your guards, and to the sides of them are going to be the B gaps, which is, as we've talked on this pod, what spread offenses really try and put in a crunch and attack the most is that B gap, because they spread you out, and then it's really difficult to account for an A and a B. And every defense wants to make sure that they're accounting for the A, or you're just going to get crushed. And so now your nickel has to actually take on blocks. He has to understand, a runner bouncing. He's responsible for tackling that individual in those paces. A force player is not responsible for making the tackle at all. He's just responsible for getting it back to his buddies, right? And so what Heatherman and all kinds of defenses are doing now, you see it all across all levels of football that I watch, where now you have to have a nickel who can actually fill the C gap. He can produce in pass rush. Another thing that Keontae Scott was very good at in this defense. Heatherman sends them backside or opposite of the running back multiple times a game, right? And that individual has to be able to, get the quarterback down. It's something we see more and more of these large quarterbacks or these elusive quarterbacks where, that first guy whiffs, and now you've got, a -1 on your back end. And it's a coverage player that you've taken out to blitz, right? And the quarterback's in a scramble drill, which puts your defensive rules into flux as it is. And then, you see a lot of explosives that way. Keontae Scott was excellent about getting the guy down, or at least flushing him to a way that, he wasn't able to make a play. We saw that all throughout the season with Keontae Scott. And then he also, had ball skills to be able to jump a pass against Ohio State and take it to the house, right? Which what you would typically think of with a nickelback or a cornerback being able to do. So all of that in one package is very rare, and is something that made Keontae Scott special for this particular defense.
Now, he was somebody who flourished at the nickel, outside at Auburn. So he started off as a nickel, was kind of on the trajectory that he ended up on as far as being like, a day 2 type of pick. Really, really good player in the SEC, now here in the ACC. It wasn't that much different there than what he's doing now as far as the production. But he has a year where he plays outside and struggles. So why would a player who is a cornerback by trade, because he came up as a corner prospect, succeed in the nickel versus the outside?
Yeah, so everything's happening faster inside, right? So it's just like when you talk about a wide receiver, right? And you say, oh, he's probably a slot wide receiver and not an outside wide receiver. It's the same deal for these corners, right? So typically they're going to lack a little bit of length outside. So in Keontae Scott's, situation, he lacks a little bit of length. And so offenses now have really gotten adept at those back shoulder throws. We saw that against, Indiana. Indiana is elite. They're on their own kind of tier with that, but every offense runs it to some degree, right? And so if an individual doesn't have the length to be able to kind of like interrupt those contested passes on back shoulders, they can get eaten up that way. Another is, do they have the length and height to contest some of those jump balls and some of those things you see in the college game a lot more than the NFL game, those fade routes where, you're just kind of 50-50 balls is what we think of, right? So that's another thing where an individual corner. And then the other is at nickel, you're coming forward more often and your eyes are forward more often. On the outside, you have to turn and run so much more than you do at nickel. That's probably the main difference, is being able to identify and find the ball with your back to it. Our good friend that you love with the Bengals, DJ Ivey, that was something that he struggled a little bit with in college. And I think it's probably why, he got such a reputation here, despite some of the skills that he had, because he just struggled with that. And it took him a long time to get better at that, and he has, right? But those are the main differences. And then just the physicality and size that you're going to face outside is quite a bit different. the Jeremiah Smiths of the world are obviously the outlier elite types, and they'd be good against anybody, right? But that's what I mean is, that body type is something you're going to see outside a lot more. And it just does, it's a different position with different responsibilities on the outside versus the nickel. And to me, you're recruiting to a different position, right? It's a free safety, strong safety. You're not recruiting the same guy for that. It's the same deal at corner. You're recruiting a different type of player at nickel than you would outside. That doesn't mean they can't play both. You see safeties all the time play free and strong, but typically they're better at one or the other. And it's the same deal with corners. Keontae Scott is like a prototype for what Miami wants that position to look like because of his looseness, so that he can still be a coverage guy, but his toughness and the way he tackles, is almost like he's an extra linebacker as well. So really love that player.
So let's use that to transition to someone who might be Miami's nickel this coming year, which is Omar Thornton, the transfer from Boston College. Now, Keontae Scott, a corner that settled in and fit best at nickel. With Thornton, here in high school, kind of always played just close to the line, but a lot of people thought safety for him, and then he ended up, playing all over the place at Boston College. But I think probably more of the safety type of athlete playing nickel than Keontae Scott, maybe more of the corner type of athlete. So a guy like this, who obviously the physicality part and the just playing fast and all that, the violence aspect of Keontae Scott, I think he fits in perfectly, but different skill set a little bit in terms of the movement stuff. How do you see Omar Thornton? I know you haven't studied him at length, but just this type of athlete, this type of profile fitting in Coach Heatherman's defense at the nickel.
Yeah, he's a little bit more of a big nickel, what you would kind of think of in that regard. So you can really utilize him as, an overhang, like you talked about earlier, which is really more of a responsibility than a position, right? It's an area on the field that they drop into. I think you're going to see him be more of an overhang, close to the line of scrimmage, like maybe press type nickel, right? Where you've got a safety over the top, right? For some of those seam verticals that you see in today's game quite a bit. And then I think you're going to use his physicality and insert him in the fit a lot more than you did Keontae Scott. And his ability to blitz is right on par with Keontae Scott. So I think you're going to lose a little bit in the coverage movement skills. I think you're going to gain a little bit in just being an enforcer, a banger, at that position. And I talked earlier about everything being a little bit quicker. So I think what you're going to see with him is him be able to use his physicality early and get hands on individuals, reroute tight ends, and then use his speed and physicality whenever it comes to running down the flats a little bit more than what you did with Keontae Scott. So those are going to be the big differences.
I was surprised watching Keontae Scott over the course of the year. At the beginning, Notre Dame, he had some plays where he was, just, manning up receivers or at least dealing with receivers. It seemed like his coverage responsibilities, I don't know if they changed over the course of the year, but maybe it seemed like they leaned more into him blitzing, him more against the run as the year went on. Is that something with this position with Coach Heatherman, that maybe the coverage responsibilities have reduced to the point where you don't need a pure corner or someone who has that corner ability necessarily?
Yeah, so you're relying on your creepers, you're relying on when you insert and replace, right? So, when you blitz someone like Keontae Scott or those individuals off the nickel, it's not like you just leave whoever they were responsible for, right? You've got to replace them, and typically you roll, and so you either have an athletic linebacker like Miami was able to do in some situations, or you roll a safety down and over, right? And Keontae Scott really had a knack for coming when the quarterback wasn't able to identify him. That's kind of like late comes or blitzes. And typically as a quarterback, whenever you get a nickel blitz, you're wanting to throw into the blitz, right? You're wanting to throw into the receiver that they left, right? Because it takes a little bit of time for the replacement to get there. But Keontae Scott and Heatherman's defense really does a great job of disguising that to where the quarterback doesn't identify it early enough. I think you're probably you're seeing the exact same thing that I saw, where the pure coverage responsibilities of Keontae Scott did decrease throughout the year. He was a little bit more of, a run fit, blitzer, an overhang, and responsible for attacking screens, things like that, a lot more than just lining up on the slot receiver and just following them wherever they go. That's something you're seeing from defenses all over, right? Because quarterbacks are just too good and offensive coordinators are too good with your tendencies. If you just try and line up and run routes or cover their routes all day, they'll eat you up. And we saw that under Guidry, quite frankly, right? That his defense was a little more static, didn't adjust to motions and formations on the fly post snap quite as well. And you saw teams really have a lot of success throwing the ball against that type of defense. Heatherman has brought a little bit more modern. What you're going to see is offenses trying to adjust to this too, right? This offseason, the next year, they're going to be like looking at these, the way that all these defenses are using closed, open, post-snap rolling of safeties, inserting their creepers. They're going to try and take advantage of those run fits, right? One thing I like in a nickel is an individual who can, get these quarterbacks down. You see somebody on your screen here,
just did it.
There you go. And that's something that I really like, because Keontae Scott, his coverage ability at that position, where with also having the tackling, is pretty rare. I think Omar Thurton's probably more of what you're seeing as your stock big nickel that's happening these days. And to go back to, Nicky Memori, he's probably like a college version of that.
Pete, you sent me a very interesting text yesterday, which actually prompted me to want to do this whole thing, which is you were talking about the potential for somebody that we've been slotting in at safety to play nickel, which is Dylan Day from Baton Rouge, a guy that played corner, nickel, safety, receiver all across the board in high school, has been mostly a safety here, but still retains some of that cornerback skill and definitely a physical player.
Yeah, I posted on the Discord yesterday afternoon, just talking to some people. From what I understand, Day, and it's not something that he hasn't done before, D, but I'm hearing he's going to get an extended look at nickel here during the spring. A few different reasons. One, I think Conrad Hussey coming in really provides some good depth at safety. Day has been a special teams monster. He's had some opportunities. The Ole Miss game, I think that none of us are going to forget that one. It could have been a pick six and maybe put that game away. Tough to say away at that juncture of the game, but really would have given Miami. That was right before half, I believe. So he's been playing, but I don't know, man. I just think his skill set might be better served there at the nickel spot. Some of the blitzing stuff, D, you go back and look at his high school tape, which I'll pull up now. We were going back and projecting him as a future nickel. That's what I think Guidry really saw him as. So a combination of a little more depth there with not only Conrad Hussey coming in, but let's remember JJ Dunnigan is going to be pushing for some playing time, and I think he's going to cement himself as a guy who gets real snaps this year. But Dylan Day, man, Lance, you tell me what you think about his skill set potentially fitting in there as a guy he's got the twitch, the ball skills, I think have left a little bit to be desired at this point. But the physicality and the twitch, I think could fit well in that spot.
Yeah. So players improve, right? Each year you're expecting development, you're expecting players to improve, you're expecting growth, right? One of the things that I saw from Dylan Day when he first got here, he was a little bit more of like a predator type, right? A see it, kill it, see it, hit it type of player, right? Very much a moving forward type of guy, right? And that's something that I've talked quite a bit about already. You're going to see your nickel need to do a lot. He's got the physicality part. Absolutely. Really love the way that, he has had some explosive hits on special teams, the way that he plays, with basically no fear is the way it looks on film, right? I'm not in his head, but that's the way he plays on film, right? The thing with nickel that would be a projection for him is you've got to understand so many responsibilities that you don't have to really do. Like as an outside corner, you can pretty much say, okay, you've got the one. And when I say the one, that's the furthest outside wide receiver, right? So if you switch and the two becomes the one, you've now got that guy, right? But that's basically what you're identifying in, I don't know, half the coverages probably. And so that's something you can do early. But as nickel, You've got to identify when you have the C. You've got to identify when you've got the overhang, when you're the apex. You've got to identify when you're the force. You've got to identify when you're blitzing, when to blitz, how to blitz. And then you've got to finish those plays. And on top of it, you need to have ball skills, right? I believe I need to see some growth in the instincts, the identifying the responsibilities, and then in the ball skills. But again, to my original point, players improve all the time. And as experience goes, that's one thing you're going to learn more, right? You're going to learn the defense. You're going to learn your responsibilities, your keys, when you should be going. So those would be where you need to see some growth. It's always a projection when a player hasn't played it much. But that play you're seeing right there, right, where he just sticks his foot in the ground and goes, there was a wasted step there, right? He was slow to attack that. On that film that you just showed me, I saw it for 3 seconds, right, and was able to see, a false step that, if he triggers a little bit quicker, he's going to be either taking the ball away or, right there. At the college level, that half step could be the difference between making that tackle and a guy, getting away from you and getting upfield. So those would be some areas of growth for me, and would be one thing that I need to see some development from him. But he absolutely has the skill set. And Pete, I agree with you. I think his best position is nickel. I do not see him as a typical free safety because of some of those instincts, awareness type questions that I have. And if there's one position on the field, right, that is instinct awareness on the defensive side, it's safety, right? That's what made Ed Reed special. That's what makes these, the ball finds them types like Bryce Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because they see it a half beat faster than everybody else. And I don't see that in Dylan Day all the time. So I think he's best suited for a nickel, and we'll see where he goes from there.
Yeah, by the way, this segment is always brought to you by Canada Financial, which we'll talk about more here in a second. Shout out to Sebastian Canada. But one thing with Day, 6'2", right? So the length, we talked about Emmanuel from Seattle, the different body types. Again, I historically associate nickel, just old school, with the shorter guy, right? The longer guy will be outside. But when you do have a longer nickel, whether it's a big safety like Emmanuel or whatever, or a guy like Dylan Day, who's just, I don't know where you put him, but he is 6'2", 6'1". How does that help you? What can you do with a longer nickel as opposed to someone who's a little more short and stout?
Love length at a nickel because of the RPO game, right? Where these quarterbacks are getting so good at just riding that ball until the very last second and pulling it and hitting those windows, right? Length closes windows. I'll go back to the Texas A&M play that Bryce Fitzgerald made a great catch on, great play on, bad throw, not a great throw. The guy was probably open if he makes a great throw, if we're being honest here. But Chase Smith helped make that throw bad with his length. He was able to, just have length in that open first passing window, right? And the quarterback held it for a beat too long, was a little late and behind. Bryce Fitzgerald finishes the play. He gets the girls, he gets the glory, as he should, right? But Chase Smith at least did his part in that play with his length influencing the quarterback's vision and where he can put the ball just a little bit. Same deal with your nickels, right? Whenever you're in those tight spaces, we've talked about it happens fast, those windows close. An extra inch, we all know we get an extra inch, it can make the difference, right? And that arm length, 1-2 inches longer, can be the difference between that pass getting completed, getting a fingernail on it, or maybe even an interception. So, inches matter.
So the good Valentine's Day message there, Lance, for the Valentine's Day crew, sending a message. But no, listen, so we're talking about the nickel position and guys on the roster. There's a few different ways we could go here. I want to just talk
Amari Brown.
Let's go. Let's start there. So there's a lot of different candidates, and guys that can play other spots but can also play a nickel. Let's start with Damari Brown, because to me, the fact that he's 200 plus pounds, legitimately, and I mean, this is one of those guys, I compare him to David Njoku, that when you see this guy in person, it's just a different level of physique. This guy's just, he looks like he should be in WWE. Like, he's a strong dude and he's physical. He likes to hit. You see him when he has opportunities to hit. I wouldn't call him like a reckless missile out there where he's just flying and smashing piles. But when he's one-on-one or he has an opportunity to tackle somebody, stopping power is what I see from him. could he be somebody, assuming he's willing, which has been the challenge because he wants to prove he's an outside corner. I think he took some steps to do that last year. But if he's willing to play inside and that's something that works out, how does he fit there?
I mean, that's my guy. Like, I think Damari Brown is a prototype nickel in this defense with his size, his physicality, his length, his ability to, press. He can match up with tight ends. He's got some quicks to be able to kind of like close some of those. I was wondering if anyone's going to, pick up on my jokes earlier, but it looks like your comments are not disappointing. But yeah, I mean, that's where I've always wanted Damari Brown to be. I don't know the character or the mindset, those kinds of things when I'm watching these guys, right? And you touched on it, Danny, about the fact that, hey, the guy's got to want to be there.
I've heard before people run with things, I've heard his character is good. It's just that, he wants a lot of these guys, they look at nickel as kind of like, you're saying I can't play outside.
Well, they
don't get drafted as high. They don't get the contract.
That's what it is. I was going to say, Keontae Scott is not a guaranteed first-round pick because he's not a boundary corner, right?
Yeah.
So his stock is his value is being hurt because he's viewed as a guy who can't play outside, which,
nickels go second round, outside corners go first round. And when you are a first round pick, and I hate to, rabbit hole here, but when you're a first round pick, it sets your whole career up. Your second contract now has that first round as a baseline, right? Look at the guys that are 7th round picks who hit and become really good players. Every time their second contract is smaller than the first round contract who's getting to their second contract, even if they're the same type of player or same level, all the accolades, that draft status follows you in your contracts the rest of your career. Pete, you were an agent. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that is what I see.
Off the top of my head, the one guy that I think of that I was around was Darius Leonard, who was a high second-round pick, got a $100 million deal.
Yeah, he also was a little bit of an outlier too, and linebackers typically don't go first round.
I had to give you an outlier. I had to give you an outlier right there.
Yeah, but your second round linebackers are your first round like other positions for the most part. We've had like 3 go first round in the last 7 years, right? So a second round linebacker versus a 7th round linebacker, though, I bet the contracts are different. But I brought you into it. You gave me your opinion.
But I agree. I do agree. It carries with you. You get second, third, fourth opportunities, even if you weren't a very good player. If you were a future a former first round pick, it certainly does, Lance.
And by the way, let's go with this wormhole because I want to talk about this a little bit before we even finish with Damari, because this is relevant to his. Because you've hit on exactly the issue with Damari Brown playing nickel, which is outside corner, more prestigious, more money, whatever. I think these NFL teams need to start treating nickel the same way they treat their other starters, because I'm looking at the top 2 defenses in the league last year, Seattle and Houston. Seattle with Imanwari, I mean, he was one of the most important players on their defense. I'd say Witherspoon at outside, who, by the way, he would have been an incredible nickel too. He just happens to be on the outside. But yeah, he's great. But Imanwari is a key guy in that team. And then Houston, I mean, when you think about Houston's defensive backfield, at least for me, the first name I think of is Jalen Petrie, the guy from Baylor. He's the nickel. So Brian Branch from the Lions, I'm sure I forgot. Derwin James for LA Chargers. Like these teams, Cooper DeJean, he plays the nickel for Philly a bunch. It's like these nickels are key guys on the best defenses. So why are they not getting paid? It's not like they're
wow. My algorithm is listening to us right now. You guys continue. I'm going to pull up the tweet that just popped into my.
But Damari, if he does both, right? If he shows, hey, I can play outside and inside, and he's versatile, and he can, play both. To me, that's only improving his value. You asked like who I see as the best fit. I think it's Damari Brown. I think, if I could mold a guy that's currently on the roster and stick him at nickel next year, it's probably Damari Brown if he's got the mindset. When I talk about character, I'm only talking about football character. I'm not talking about the BYU kid out, raping people and doing that kind of stuff, because I don't know. I don't have any of that, right? When I talk about character, I'm talking about what I can see on film, and that's football character, right? Treat nickel corners as a premium position.
He's
fake
listening.
Corey says, yeah, fake Corey is definitely listening to this podcast, and he's got it right, in my opinion. But Yeah, and next, you've got Omar Thornton. We talked a little bit about his physicality. He's going to be a little bit more of an enforcer type, a little more of the overhang, typical kind of big nickel. Really like his tape as well. I was impressed from what I've been able to see. I don't watch Boston College football very often. I'll just be real with you, right? And didn't have a lot to go on with him. Pulled up a couple of games, and I was like, this guy, not only is he talented and performing, I just loved the way he competed. Yeah. Boston College was not a great team, right? And you see it all the time with not a great team. The players know it. They know we're getting boat race today, guys. And you see it. I don't really want to dive. I don't really want to make that hit at the 6-inch line because he's going to score anyway, right? But how many times have we seen a guy fumble in that spot, or we just right before he crosses the goal line, the ball comes loose, some of those things. You saw Omar Thornton 100% all the time, and he was not putting anything on film that wasn't high football character. I love that addition wherever we slot him in. I think he's going to be successful. I think you could even play him, at linebacker some in a dime situation, right? And have him, be able to get somebody on the ground if they do try and pop a run. So big fan of him. You're losing a lot of physicality with the Jacoby Thomas and some of the other departures with Keontae Scott. Some of those things I really like what they've replaced it with. And then I just want to see some growth and development from some of the players on the team, like the Dylan Days, the Damari Brown, some of those things. I know our guy, Ethan O'Connor, he got some stuff on Twitter for, the number one overall pick, making perfect passes to a back shoulder guy, making unbelievable 4th down catches and getting their heel down. Almost nobody on earth is stopping some of those passes that they completed, guys. I mean, it's just pretty impossible because you can't jump the back shoulder when you don't have help, or they're going to be striking up the band, right? And that's what you're most worried about. So, Ethan O'Connor, he's got some versatility as well. I think he can play inside out also, in a pinch. I just love this defensive backs room. I mean, think of the difference between 4 years ago, what we're seeing out there and what we have now. I mean, the third string guy here could start on a lot of Power 4 teams in my view. So, they've got a lot of options. I trust that Heatherman will find. We may see a little more mixing and matching this year than what we have seen in years past, right? Where Keontae Scott was kind of a set it and forget it, 900 type snap player when he was healthy. You might see some roles, right, where maybe Thornton is more of your big nickel when you're really wanting to, have run fits and protect against the run game. You may see a Damari Brown or a Dylan Day, somebody like that, whenever you're, in some of the 2nd, 3rd and long type situations. But they've got the versatility to do it, in my view.
Let me mention a few guys that we haven't talked about. Chris Ewald. So Chris Ewald, if he would not have gotten hurt last year, we should have talked about him earlier just based on how he fits into this. Because Chris Ewald, if he didn't get hurt earlier in the season last year, he would have played on defense. He did play on special teams and in blowouts and stuff like that, but he would have played on the defensive side of the ball. So he's one guy that I want to just make sure everybody pays attention to. Very smart, very well coached, Broward County kid, came up covering guys like Jeremiah Smith, getting passes from CJ Bailey in practice for Chaminade. So this is a guy who's battle tested, obviously played other great teams as well. So Chris Ewald is someone, as he gets heavier, I think that's the big, especially at nickel, where you got to tackle even more than corner. You're closer to the action. I think him putting on weight, getting healthier, just getting sturdier in his body is what's going to propel him. But he's got some decent length at nickel. He's over 5'11". I think he's 6 foot. He's got long arms and very, very well coached, smart player. He's someone who would have played last year. And then Ryan Mack, the son of Rod Mack, longtime coach up there, also played for the Hurricanes, was a really good linebacker for us. He was somebody that ascended at the Under Armour All-America game in Florida, really covered some of the best receivers in the country. His stock jumped. He's been here 2 years. He's been banged up pretty much the entire time. It's been injuries with him consistently, but he's somebody that does have talent and kind of fits that profile of the nickel. Both of those guys, I would say more of the corner type nickel than the really, dominant run defender, blitzer types that we discussed earlier. But certainly,
Mac was the number one corner with OJ Frederic on his team. He was
Yeah.
the number one corner on that team. People kind of forget. They were both awesome. They both played very well, but Frederic had some problems with some of those young bucks when he was in high school, right? And they put Mac on him, and he performed. So Mac's got a lot of talent. But think about what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about Jabari, Antoine, Chris Ewald, maybe being third string players. Those guys could absolutely start at P4 schools, if they're healthy right now and not embarrass themselves. We saw Antoine in big spots, not embarrass himself. He, struggled maybe with Jeremiah Smith on a couple of snaps, but who doesn't, again, especially as a true freshman. And the depth that you have and the ability to kind of fill in some roles this year is where I think it kind of lends you hope that they can be another championship contender next year.
Jabari Antoine, glad you mentioned him. He's going to play somewhere. This is a guy that they got big hopes for. With Damari Brown coming back is what makes it so interesting, because I don't know where he fits in. I could tell you, I saw him I've not seen him play nickel in practice when I've seen Jabari. He's been outside there. He was coming back from injury. You can't be playing everywhere. He's got to hone in on one spot. Seeing him at the corner position in one of these live action scrimmages. I want to say it was the last scrimmage of the year before the actual scout team came in and they got ready to play Notre Dame. He was making tackles all over the place. I mean, he is not a cover corner that's not going to want to tackle. Jabari Antoine is a tackler. He could probably play safety. I think he's physical enough to do that. He's not going to because he can cover, but he well enough to be on the outside, but he can do it. He's big. I think he's a guy that if you put him at nickel, he could flourish because he's just coachable, smart, wants to play. He can tackle, he can cover. That's another option that we haven't talked about, but he could fit in there in the nickel. And then the last one I want to get to, and I'll start with you, Pete, on this one, and then I'll get Lance's thoughts. We had a little test run of this because Keontae Scott got hurt, right? So the last 3 games, you didn't have Keontae Scott playing nickel. Bryce Fitzgerald played a lot of nickel to end the year last year. And I thought coverage-wise, I mean, he could probably play anywhere. He's so elite when it comes to turning, running, just the speed. He is, to me, elite cover guy. He could play corner if he needed to. But his blitzing and ability to just forget it, I'm not sure, the physicality with Keontae Scott, how it compares. He was pretty effective as a blitzer. He got to the quarterback and made some things happen. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we should be talking about Bryce at nickel a little bit. I like him better at safety personally, just because he has more room to operate and cause damage. But man, he was.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I prefer him at safety, just kind of taking away a lot of the back end of the field there. I think he did it in a pinch, and he has the skill set to do it. But you're asking a lot of physicality out of that position in what we saw this year, and I just think that it's not so much that he can't be a better tackler than he's been and continue to improve there, but I think he's just so special on the other aspect of just being that free safety, and I'd rather him back there. I mean, we talk a lot about him having to continue to become a better tackler at safety. Is that not more even more of a premium at the way that nickel spot was played this year, as we've talked about a lot on the show? So to me, I prefer him at safety. But I guess we'll see what happens. And I think every game is different. That's the beauty of how these things go, right? Certain matchups he may be asked to play there.
Yeah, Lance, what do you think about Bryce at nickel?
Yeah, so I think if you're doing that, right, you've got a 9 at safety and turning him into a 7 or 8 at nickel, right? I think if you got a 9 at safety, you keep your 9 at safety, right? And one of these other guys that we've talked about can be a 7 or 8 at nickel. I think, yeah. I mean, we've talked about 5 different people, right, that have the possibility of playing there. Like, that's competition. That's what Miami was built on, right? You throw these 4 or 5 guys out there in spring and fall camp. The reason why it's fall camp is it's the fall semester, guys. So It's not summer camp; it's fall camp. And so, you throw them out in spring and fall camp, right? And let them.
We don't have seasons down here though, Lance.
It's so hot.
That's what you got to realize, man. We don't have the seasons, so No,
I've been busting to like get that out there because you ask why it's called.
We've been thinking out loud on it.
Because Lance, you're not there at fall camp.
It's 112.
It's the hottest day of the year. It is. People are melting out there. So it's like you call it fall. Yeah. The leaves are bright green and everybody's sweating their ass off. It doesn't feel like fall camp, but
it's probably 80 there today. You guys don't.
Oh yeah, I'll be wearing my sweater at the light, which we're gonna. That's the transition. Let's talk about that. But real quick,
hey, it's not even 70 right now. I'll let you know, Lance. We're still there's a 6 in front of me.
I don't know how you're able to live. I don't know how you're gonna make it through your day, Pete.
Look at all those sunny look at all those suns right there, man. Are you kidding me?
That's why you live where people vacation.
Well, so Lance, I know you got to go, so I want to talk baseball first. Let's talk about the person who makes all this possible with Upon Further Review, and that's Sebastian Canada Financial.
Yeah, if you've got a small business. Your forte is growing your business, finding what's profitable, being out there, relationships, doing those kinds of things. Let Sebastian at Canada Financial be your CFO. He can handle your bookkeeping, handle your plan, handle, what is your opportunity cost for the things that you're doing right now, right? Are there areas that you can focus on to grow your margin even more? Profitability doesn't mean most profitability, right? And having an expert, somebody that can look at those things and have a consultation with you and give you advice on that is invaluable in my mind for these small business owners who are experts at what they're doing, but maybe not at some of the financial topics that we talk about here. Canada Financial, CANNATA financial.com. I'll spell it correctly this week. And give them a call and, they will take care of you and allow you to do what you do best, which is run your business.
And it's not just Atlanta, it's all over Florida. But real quick, Lance, and you can sign yourself out because I know you got to go in a second. But baseball, wanted to talk about it. I've seen this team. Again, there's a lot of parity. I think this team's better than the team that was close to Omaha last year. And I think it was better than the Louisville team that beat them. Again, a lot of parity. We saw the number 1 and 2 teams not even make the tournament last year. So that's what it is. But what do you see with this team based on what you've been able to? I know you haven't seen the practices, but you've seen these other players. You know the numbers. What are you thinking with this year's team?
Yeah, baseball, I fell in love with it as a kid because my mind has always tended to drift towards numbers. Baseball is a numbers game. The sabermetrics revolution was as I was kind of growing up as a kid. College baseball has always had my heart. I'm a big Missouri State fan. You guys kind of hear about that sometimes as well. They've always had a great baseball program. It's something they could compete in with the big guys, right? And so that was something that always caught my attention. Miami winning 4 national titles, 2001, won both a baseball and a football title. People kind of forget about that a little bit. So I've always been, in love with college baseball. What I did this year, was just try to put together something called base runs. And so base runs just tries to regress all of the activities that happen on a baseball field, convert them to runs expected, right? And then assign value to them. You use a Pythagorean theorem formula to try and then convert that into an expected win percentage, right? Then you take those wins, right, against the win percentage on how many games you're going to play. You try and convert that into a record, right? Then you try and plug those games into an RPI calendar that a calculator that I put together, right? And you kind of see, okay, well, where does this place the team at the end of the year, right? One of the under the radar things with Miami this year is they have several more home games than they had last year. And what does that mean? Well, that means that you have to win more games to have the same RPI as what you had last year because you get a boost in the RPI formula for road games. So even though I don't have their record improving a gigantic amount, or I have their record improving quite a bit, it doesn't improve their RPI a gigantic amount in the calculator when you look at what you're expecting. But my base runs win percentage, I had them coming in winning 37 games on a 54 game schedule, so 37-17 on the season, with an RPI coming in. Let me see what I got here. I got to pull up my spreadsheet. This is awesome podcasting, right? But RPI of about 0.5701, which would put them, coincidentally enough, the exact number that they were last year. I didn't plan that, right? That was just what I looked up after I ran all the numbers. Put it in as a Monte Carlo, which is basically just you simulate the various characteristics of the team, 10,000, 100,000 times, however many you want to run it, right? You come out with a record, that 37 wins that I kind of talked about earlier. They've got a lot of opportunities here, right? Because I'm pretty conservative in what I put in on their season, right? Losing, 2 out of 3 at Clemson, losing 2 out of 3 versus Florida, because those darn guys always seem to do that to us. Losing 2 out of 3 to Florida State, losing 2 out of 3 to North Carolina State, right? So all you got to do is win 1 or 2 of those, and now you're in the hosting conversation, right? I think you've got to have some steps forward in your pitchers this year, right? Last year, I felt like we have several good, solid pitchers. Something you also have to remember when you're talking about the college baseball game, 5.50 is the average ERA for a pitcher, right? We converted to what happens in pro ball all the time, right? And, a 5 ERA starting pitcher is a pretty good starting pitcher, right? But
you can get drafted.
Yeah, but the Floridas and the Tennessees and the whatever, the UCLA.
Wow, guys, I gotta bring this up. This is breaking news because we talked about this guy a lot this year, and I know you have to get off, Lance. SMU defensive coordinator Scott Simons is getting hired as the new inside linebackers coach for the Cowboys.
All right, yeah. Well, Royals semifinal. Let's get him out of the picture.
Yeah,
he hurt us.
Good coach. He did a great job with us and some of our underneath game that we like.
That's
to
a
do.
big loss for them at this
looks
juncture,
like
man.
Crum,
He's been there for a few years.
Maurice Crum it looks like he's going to replace him. Who's his dad?
Yeah, just internal promotion.
Was an all-America linebacker for the Canes. But anyways, Lance, finish up because I know you got to go, and we're going to talk more, by the way, about baseball. By bringing you on for a baseball-only show. So get back to it.
Hope so. Yeah, but I think we need one of those starting pitchers to take a step forward, right, and be kind of like the 3.5, 4 ERA type, right, to really kind of give you a driving force in some of those Florida, North Carolina State, Florida State type series, right? I think you're just at a disadvantage when you don't have some of those. And, you've got Ajar Siskar, nice player. I don't know. He's going to need to take a step forward. Darius, from what I understood, took a step back in fall, and is starting out as the Sunday guy rather than taking that step forward you hope for. That doesn't mean he can't. And I think the key to the season is going to be, Menendez and Robert coming back from injury in the middle of the season. What do they look like? Coming off surgery, typically that tends to impact your command. How quickly do they ramp up, right? And then what happens, right? If you're able to host and you get a Menendez to kind of be one of those frontline guys like you hope he can be, or at least a weekend guy, that increases the depth of your bullpen and gives you a shot, right? College baseball is so much about what do you have in your bullpen, because games are won and lost so much in that 6th, 7th inning. Where in the pro game, you got a guy throwing 95 to 100, in that spot, and they've got an ERA under 3, right? And it's a totally different game in college baseball. And so Miami has more depth there this year. I do like some of the arms they've added, but they've all got questions outside of Bilka. And I really want to see what the answer comes for there before I get a little more aggressive. I think they're a better team this year. I think they got a chance to return to the Super Regionals. And then, once you get there, anybody's got a shot, right? You got Murray State going to the College World Series and some of these other teams, right? So you just got to get hot, get a right matchup, and we'll see what happens this year. I'll see you at the light. I'm very excited for college baseball. Hopefully we'll talk about it more as we go along this year. Appreciate you guys, and take care, okay?
Happy Galentine's.
Yep.
Pete, man, when you broke in with that breaking news, I thought it was like Lane Kiffin getting arrested or something. Like,
dude, that's what are you talking about? That's massive news. He was one of the longest tenured. He was one of the longest tenured, and Rhett Lashley is he's a thorn in our side.
No, they did good, and he had a good plan against us. Stopped our running game. He stopped.
Listen, we can't beat SMU until we beat them.
It's amazing. They stopped our running game better than Ohio State with 4 first-rounders on defense. A defensive tackle is going to go first round, 2 linebackers that could go top 10, and a safety that could go top 10 whose specialty stopped in the run. And SMU stopped our run better than these guys did. So
without the bodies.
Yeah, clearly. So yeah, so I think that's no, it is big news. I was just messing with you there. Real quick, Pete, we're gonna switch to recruiting. They're accusing you of clickbait. I gotta say, Pete, the chat
literally
this is the least clickbait headline you've done. You've done some of the finest works of clickbait.
Listen, the clown Harley's Joker disappeared after I confronted him on it. So I will continue to mog him unless proven wrong.
But let's talk real quick for those who are scrambling to get your Valentine's plan together. We got you covered. Our friends, Islas Canarias, #1 Cuban restaurant on the planet, got the whole Valentine's Day package. I am in love with you. Partnership with House of Lilac, which is some of the finest flowers in Miami. This is high-end flowers. It's not like just rolling to Publix and picking something up last minute. 93.50, so $93. I wonder what that means. That's an unusual price, $93.50, but very affordable. You talk about these flowers alone are very, very expensive. This is not off the rack flowers. These are expensive premium flowers. And then you got the best croquetas on the planet. You got the I am in love with you box, little personalized thing. Got a little card here. Look at this. I love you, boo boo, right there with this monster type figure. So it's got a little personal touch. There you go. Scan right here to order the bundle. You can scan right there on your screen, or you just go to islascanariasexpress.com. Plus, the vase has got a rosé mix as well. Or sorry, rose mix. I read that wrong. But you get the rose mix there. Maybe you can buy some. You don't need the rosé. You're going to have ZONIN Prosecco. But anyway, shout out to Islas Canarias and House of Lilac for the deal.
Flankerton says, I really thought we hired our running back coach with that sort of reaction. So we obviously need to hire a running back coach, need to hire a tight ends coach. D, unfortunately, I'm told we whiffed on our top tight end coach option. So I don't really have anything else there, but we did, from my understanding, miss on the guy we wanted at tight ends coach. So
you know what? Sometimes that happens and the next guy ends up being better. So we'll see how it goes. It's not like missing on Jeremiah Smith, you know? It's one of those things where a lot of times the second choice is better than the first choice. So we'll see.
Maybe further down the line than that at this point, but
we'll be
hope
all right.
It works out. Yeah.
I lose sleep over a lot of things. Miami's tight end coach, with the money we have, is not high on my list. We'll get somebody that can do the job. It's about finding the right fit too. You know, if someone doesn't want to be grinding at the level that Miami's pushing these guys or whatever it is, that's not necessarily the guy that's the best option. These, coaches are not like a Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith's going to be Jeremiah Smith wherever he goes. Coach is so much about fit and who's the right fit. That's a lot. Look at the first class we had in 2022, or the first coaching staff. I mean, you were talking about brand names at every single spot. Adai, Gaddis, right? Just Kevin Steele. Just name brands. Boom, 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 boom. And it was a total disaster. So it's more about, to me, finding the fits. And I'm confident that Miami is going to find the fit they need on the offensive staff, and defensive staff looks like it's going to be pretty consistent here, Pete. So that's another good thing. Real quick, before we get to recruiting stuff, so we're going to talk about quarterbacks, which is on everybody's mind. I want to shout out my boy, Josh Sarnoff, daily CanesInSight chat member. He's never been banned by Pete, unlike many chat members. This guy's in the comments every day.
I got banned like 2 people, man.
I think you've scared them. You've mogged them away. Some of them. You intimidated them out of there.
Listen, I can't control that one. You have to get yourself right if you're going to continue getting mogged by me. I can't control that. I can only control my own moggability.
Hard to mog, Josh. Strong chin, jawline, and then of course he is the impresario at Scrap City. Looking for scrap metal recycling you could trust. You just found it. Scrap City. Recycling is beautiful when done right. Fair pricing, fast service, a team that knows the value of your metal. From individual loads to commercial volumes, they make recycling simple and rewarding. Bring your scrap to Scrap City. Get paid what it's worth. 954-330-9472. Or you can go to their locations, Pompano Beach, Delray Beach, scrap-city.com. Plus, they can pick up at your place. I mean, we're talking about just people who work with their hands, man. We got a lot of those people that listen to this show. You might have a small business where you are generating scrap metal. It doesn't have to be a giant business. Scrap City, where you want to be. They specialize in non-ferrous metals like copper, aluminum, brass, and stainless, but also accept ferrous metal and electronic scrap. Scrap City, scrap-city.com. All right, so let's get into it, Pete. Quarterback position when it comes to recruiting. This is a name that stands out for a lot of reasons. It is just a memorable name. When you hear it. That is Wonderful Mons, the fourth quarterback out of Vero Beach, but he is from Fort Pierce. Shout out to our guy, Rhett, out there in Fort Pierce. There's a lot of hardcore Canes fans in Fort Pierce.
And Rhett, no Lashley.
What's up?
Rhett, no Lashley.
What does that mean?
You said Rhett, right?
Oh, yeah, no, Rhett, not Lashley. Oh, yeah.
Rhett, no Lashley. No Lashley.
No Lashley. This is Rhett, our Canes fan out there in Fort Pierce, and I was actually talking to him about Wonderful Mons the other day. So Wonderful Mons, the fourth, family legendary. His grandfather played in the NFL. Wonderful, terrific Mons. His dad was a minor league player, baseball player. I believe they're involved in politics and stuff like that. Like, these are just big dogs out there in the Fort Pierce area. He played at Vero Beach, losing the state title game in a heartbreaker to Noah Grubbs, Notre Dame signee out of Orlando. So this is a guy who's been on the scene forever, had a huge freshman year, monster freshman year. We'll watch his freshman highlights or his sophomore highlights in a second, but his freshman year, he was outstanding. His sophomore year, dealt with some injuries, I think 7 touchdowns, 0 picks. So it wasn't like he had a bad year, just didn't produce a lot. He didn't play a lot. So his stock has actually dropped a little bit in terms of the recruiting services. He's the number 3 quarterback. He's a 3-star quarterback on 247. He's a 4-star quarterback on the composite, number 17 quarterback in the country on the composite, number 36 quarterback on 247. I think part of the reason for that is he was a 28 prospect who has reclassed into the 27 class. And from what I understand, this guy's actually young for the 28 class. His deal is just that he's kind of like Austin Simmons.
I was going to say Austin Simmons. Yeah.
He's one of these guys that's just smart enough where he can reclass just on grades, but it's not like his age is a reclass age. But the talent, the size, you saw him in that picture with the coaches. He stacks up pretty good size-wise, 10.5-inch hands. I mean, talk about gripping and ripping, man. This guy has that ability. Again, we mentioned super smart, prominent family out there in Fort Pierce. He can run, just kind of like an effortless thrower.
Yes,
This is a state championship game. This is a game that
seems to have a strong base, D. I mean, I'm no quarterback expert, but he seems to have a strong lower base, which, a lot of quarterback coaches will tell you that's where it all starts for these guys.
And it's interesting. He doesn't do quarterback coach. He doesn't do camps. He just kind of works on getting better for his team. Canes Cat Heat 305 mentioning in the comments, went from number 1 overall player in the nation on Rivals preseason to dropping to 11th best after the season. With a young player like this, sometimes there's ups and downs. So I don't know if it's an overcorrection. Again, I think the reclass had a lot to do with his ranking dropping a little bit, because evaluating a young class of 2028 players, a 2027 quarterback, now he's really young. But I look at that as a positive because, he's so physically developed when you watch some of these. I don't see anything that's 3-star about this guy, just in terms of the size, the pedigree. He's in a good
pushing
program.
The ball downfield, man.
Yeah, it's kind of effortless. So, but the fact that he didn't play as much this year due to, number 1, he was injured. I think Vero Beach also had a receiver that was going to Florida State that played a lot of quarterback, where they would just hand him the ball and he would run around. So that allowed, that led to this guy not playing more. So playing time was an issue. You saw him in the state championship game, though, healthy, throwing the ball around. We'll see where this ends up, but clearly the picture you showed,
like this offense, man.
Vero Beach slings it, man. They had remember Tyler Aronson went to SMU. He was from Vero Beach, so they're played on this program. Vero Beach is a program that attracts a lot of people, like Fort Myers kids, like Wonderful Mons, the fourth. But look at that, man. Yeah, a little hospital ball there, but the ball gets there in a hurry. He looks, it's funny, for being a young class of 2028 player, he looks like he could be in college right now, just his face and physical maturity. But you saw Miami was there. in terms of visiting him. The picture you show with Mario, with Dawson, with the whole crew, that was, a couple of weeks ago. So Miami's in on this recruitment. Florida, Florida State, Ohio State. I mean, the schools you'd expect. A lot of people expect him to stay in state. What's interesting about this year is you have Davin Davidson from Sarasota, who's kind of exploded on the scene. We talked about him. Huge, 6'5", 6'6", baseball pitcher, big arm, had a great junior year, hadn't really played that much before then. He's rising quickly. It was like a low 3-star, like a no-star prospect. He's going to be a high 4-star when it's all said and done. Florida's in that one. Miami's in that one as well. So you have those two from the state of Florida, Mons being a reclass. The other one, Davidson, being kind of like a guy that emerged. But there's a third quarterback in Florida that factors into all this, Pete. And I want to kind of hand this to you, which is Neiman Lawrence. If Neiman Lawrence were to reclass, Miami Northwestern is now transferred to American Heritage. If he were to reclass for 2027, maybe he jumps on the scene. And now you have the big three each getting their own Florida quarterback. Let's just say hypothetically, Davidson going to Florida, Mons going to Florida State, and maybe Lawrence going to Miami.
Yeah, I love the way that Lawrence finished out the year. Last year, I've talked about how it's a little bit different for him because he's been playing so much since he's been playing since, 7th, 8th grade as a starter on varsity at Ransom. Was it 7th grade that he was starting? Yeah. I don't know if it was actually 7th grade, but he was a dude already in 8th grade. And then, D, this is something we've talked about wanting to do more on the show. We've been a little critical of local high school football here just because it's just everything's kind of out of whack with transfers and stuff like that. But I had LaSalle head coach, Miami-Dade 3A to 1A coach of the year, Helder Valle, on last week. And I asked him at the end of the show, hey, guys who for next year in South Florida that aren't your players, but around the county and around South Florida that people should keep an eye on. And the first name that he mentioned was Neiman Lawrence, just talking about his maturity levels, how he carries himself, his leadership qualities, the arm talent everyone talks about. That's not something that I think we've had many questions about. But when you're talking about, hey, a guy coming in who you expect to carry himself a certain way as soon as he steps in the building, I think Lawrence is someone who will cross all of those, will check all of those boxes, I should say. And I'm very excited to see what he does this year at Heritage.
No doubt about it. Now I'm a fan of what he brings to the table, just the mental part of it. For those who don't know Ransom is not a good athletic school where he started off.
Hey. I'll say this. Ryan Otero and Dan Otero may say otherwise.
Yeah. Shout out to those guys. Dan Otero making the major leagues. Ryan now number 2 in Boston Red Sox, former Cane pitcher, using that big brain. But yeah, Ransom is really an academic school. So
I got another name for you. Ready?
Ransom, go ahead.
Gideon Ajagbe.
Yeah, what happened? Where did he end up?
He went to Florida. He was a linebacker,
yeah,
and then they're saying on his bio he moved to tight end.
There you go. Well, but Ransom, not a school that produces a lot of athletes. What Ransom's known for down here, aside from being the most expensive school in Miami, it's the hardest to get in academically, right? So the academic part. Also, the movie Wild Things, starring Denise Richards and Nev Campbell, was filmed out there in.
I think that I don't think anyone knows what that is, D.
I guarantee you, pull up the chat will know exactly what I'm talking about. Wild Things, starring Denise Richards, Nev Campbell, Matt Dillon, Kevin Bacon, came out in the late 90s. I guarantee you the chat knows what movie I'm talking about. That was filmed in Ransom Everglades High School. Anyway, so Neiman Lawrence, I think his parents are cops or there's some sort of law enforcement officer. So he goes to Ransom, which again, is not a school you go to unless you're really good academically. He goes there, dominates athletically, was really good academically.
Flankerton, dude. Flankerton. I don't think people know what that is, D.
Port Knox right there. Look at that. Pool scene epic. He knows what movie I'm talking about. Come on, man. Everybody knows this movie. Filmed in Ransom Everglades. Claim to fame. Iconic movie scene. One of the first to break the girl-on-girl barrier in cinema. There you go. Kirk Menendez says, Denise Richards was hot. Married Charlie Sheen. There you go. So everybody knows what I'm talking about here. Chris Barnett says, I know it. I'm 40. Exactly.
I've been proven wrong here, but I can't say I've ever heard of it.
worth a watch. Ransom Everglades, anyways, put it on the map. But so Neiman Lawrence goes there, dominates. Again, did not leave because he didn't pass the grade academically. He was fine academically from all I heard. I heard he was good academically. But then obviously goes to Northwestern to elevate the football part of it. Teddy Bridgewater was there. He has his whole situation where he's let go, and it's a big controversy. Now that program's kind of, after a moment in the sun, kind of falling apart. Now you see Nick Lanier, his top receiver, going to Carroll City, another Miami target. He goes to American Heritage, following in the footsteps of Dia Bell. I think that's a good fit for him, right? He seems like a Heritage kind of kid. He'll get good coaching there. He'll be able to throw it to some good receivers and play in big games. So should be a good evaluation year for Neiman Lawrence at American Heritage. See what he does. You can compare him to Dia Bell, who signed with Texas, Rajah Bell's son. Truthfully, the most productive quarterback that we've seen at Heritage was Malachi Toney. I mean, as far as like when he played quarterback there, he was probably the best from a production standpoint. Dia Bell dealt with injuries a lot. Very talented guy as well. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how this quarterback logjam in the state of Florida, how it settles, because you have wonderful Champ Mons reclassifying. He's a big 3 target. You saw Mario there. Florida State's on him hard. Florida's there. Davidson, Florida's really pushing hard there. I really love Davidson. That's my kind of player with the size and with the athletic ability as a baseball pitcher. He's really, really impressive. He can run too. And then Neiman Lawrence, who you talked about, just a local kind of legend. He's a guy that you can't let that guy go and dominate. Texas came in and took our best running back and our best quarterback last year as far as locally. Got to put a fence around a player like Neiman Lawrence. So we'll see how that shakes out from a reclass standpoint. But Mons, I know his stock's dropping from a 247, all that standpoint, but there's a reason why the coaching staff's visiting him. They're keeping that one warm.
I like him. I would be all for it. I mean, I told you yesterday, hey, I hope, or a couple of days ago when we did the show at Duffy's, I was like, hey, I hope they're in this one, because I've seen him mention other schools that aren't Miami, D. So that's my only thing is, hey, you're at that point of this class where you really have to make your decision on who you want.
Yeah.
Right. So it'll be an interesting next month here, because my prediction is we'll know who our quarterback is within the next month and a half here.
I think so. And look, if you do get one of these Florida guys, that's back-to-back Florida quarterbacks, because you're talking about Darion Coleman.
I was going to ask you when the last time that happened. I mean, Marv and Jacory came right to mind, but yeah, I'm trying to think.
We got Stephen Morris. I think
Morris, and then
I think it might have been 3 in a row, because we got Marv, Jacory. No, because in 2009 we didn't take a quarterback, I don't think, and then 2010 was Morris. 2015 would have been nice to take a Florida quarterback with Lamar Jackson running around, but
you had David Thompson in there too.
Oh yeah, shout out to David Thompson.
2013, yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Preston Dewey. Listens to the show.
Does he really?
Nice. Yeah, Texas quarterback. Texas, obviously, look, Texas has been producing quarterbacks at the highest level. You have to give them the nod as far as quarterback production. Cam Ward for the Canes, he was a pretty good one. But I do think Florida, when there's good ones here, you got to get him, because Geno Smith's one of the, I mean, look, you say what you will about him as a pro quarterback. He's played a lot, made a lot of money, thrown a lot of passes in the pro level. He would have been huge for the Canes. We didn't get him. Lamar Jackson would have been huge for the Canes. Didn't get him. Tyler Huntley would have been an improvement for the Canes. Did not get him. You know, there's guys that have left that really should not be leaving. I mean,
Canes Cat Seat says Ryan Williams, Stephen Morris, Miramar, and Pace, but Williams was a transfer. I don't count that one.
Yeah. That's not even getting into the fact that, look, the way it worked out was fine, but obviously the fact that a Miami, Florida quarterback won the Heisman this year, you don't want Neiman Lawrence winning the Heisman wearing colors that aren't orange and green. So, you know, big situation to watch at the quarterback position there. Pete, real quick before we get to this last player, I want to talk about. Wanted to shout out our friends at KashKick, one of the top apps in the country. Give your free time a raise. 4.5 plus average rating in the App Store. 1.5 million downloads. One of the most popular apps in the country. Just go to KashKick, KashKick, in the App Store. Download the app. You're playing games. You're browsing. You're doing surveys. What if that time gave you real money? Give your free time a raise with KashKick. Just go to the App Store. KashKick. Download today. Get it right there on your phone. Play the games while you're waiting for the game to start at Mark Like Stadium. Make some money on the side. Go straight to your PayPal. KashKick. All right, Pete. Oh, look at that. Well, look at that. All right. I kind of like the other angle.
You were camera mogging me there.
Look at that. How about that? All right, let's get back to the basics here, Pete. So recruiting, we mentioned a lot of names. Some names are hotter than others. One name is generating a lot of buzz as far as connection to the Miami Hurricanes. KJ Caldwell, name to watch for a lot of people. Talk about him, seeing 247 on 3. Everybody kind of saying the same thing, getting the same info, and I'm hearing the same. This is a name to watch out of the Atlanta area. So Parkview High School, which I understand used to be kind of the dominant high school in the Atlanta area. It's since been surpassed by some other schools. Jeff Francoeur, big time outfielder for the Atlanta Braves and other teams. Top prospect, went there as well back in the day. But KJ Caldwell, top 10 safety in the country. Someone Miami's been on hard. Look at the names in that picture. Will Harris, Zach Etheridge, Mario Cristobal. Last year, you go to Atlanta, you get Cortez Redding, you get John Tavius Wyman. You tried very, very hard to get Blake Stewart, and right back at it with these Atlanta defensive backs. This is a group that when you go look at the NFL, and I've done these studies, I do them every offseason. It's not South Florida defensive backs, it's Atlanta area defensive backs as the best, the guys that get drafted. A lot of them go to Clemson. They go to schools all across the SEC, of course. Miami has not broken in there. They would like to, and certainly last year was a step forward with the two guys from Jonesboro High School and Wyman and Cortez Redding. Now KJ Caldwell, a name to watch, Pete. This is a guy that Yep.
Sorry to cut you off, but is it this is a new phenomenon that I think is good. It seems like a lot more parents are showing up to these school visits.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember that happening back in the day, but it's a very efficient use of a trip up there because you're getting to be around the parents as well.
100%. Look,
you only have so many limited looks in front of these guys. So
100%. If they got the time, get out there. And KJ Cole was a guy that visited during the season. So he visited for a game. I'm trying to remember which game we talked about at the time. But
this might have been a thing before, but maybe no one respected the previous staffs. I'm serious. Like this may have been a legitimate thing, but I don't remember parents saying like, "Oh wow, Miami's going to be here. Let me get over there."
Yeah,
just
look,
just
now
observation.
It's like when Saban came to those schools,
yes.
and it was like a big deal.
Yes.
So 6 foot 176 for Caldwell, number 75 overall prospect in the country, top 5 safety. Visited Miami during the fall for a game. He's already scheduled 2 trips. His spring unofficial, which will take place during spring practices. It's a long one, which is telling. March 26th through March 26th through 29. It's not like one of these trips where they're just in and out and they're visiting Florida State, whatever. Long visit in the spring. That's something to keep an eye on. Jackson Caldwell is one that took a long visit during spring. Obviously, Jackson Cantwell. Sorry, Cantwell Caldwell. It's a long day, but yeah, Jackson Cantwell visited multiple days during spring. KJ Caldwell scheduled for the same 26th through the 29th. Also, he's got his OV already set up, which those take place in the summer, June 12th. This is a guy who plays multiple positions, which we love, kind of like Wyman and Caldwell. Ran for 6 touchdowns, had 2 sacks, interception, return to kick for a touchdown, caught some passes as well. So just kind of an all-around player, as you see. Not that dissimilar from Wyman and some of these other guys. Maybe a little bigger than Wyman and Redding. Size was probably their issue. Caldwell, I don't think is the biggest guy either, but they're just getting these football players, and you could tell that when you look at him playing running back, you could tell when it comes to guys like Will Harris and Zach Etheridge, who have been around the SEC and have been around these schools, they want Atlanta to be a pipeline for the Miami Hurricanes. And there you see, by the way, Caldwell playing corner over here. So the versatility, safety is kind of a hard position to scout in high school because it's such an instant.
I'm thinking this is safety, though, Dino. The pure speed at corner.
No, when the fact that he plays so many positions.
I don't know, maybe he has verified numbers. Obviously, he's running away from people here. But me personally, I see him as more of a safety.
No doubt. I think that's where he is. But the fact that he can turn his hips and play, because one thing to remember when you're watching these kind of big school Atlanta guys, they're playing real teams, right? These are not Like, he's not out here, nice tackle there, nice strike. You're not talking about a guy that's playing against private, small private schools. This guy's playing high-end competition. There you see him turn, make the tackle. So you're seeing good on good. He's playing nickel here. You saw him playing outside. Again, all over the field. Kind of reminds me, not in terms of, I'm not saying it's a one-to-one comp, but when we watched Blake Stewart last year, there you see him turn and run down the field. He turns pretty naturally.
See, I like Blake Stewart's tape better than this.
Blake Stewart might have, but Blake Stewart I don't think was playing against the same level of comp, right? I think that's something you got to consider. Blake Stewart was playing against a lower level of comp, but dominating, but doing a lot of these same things where he's playing receiver, he's playing in the box, he's playing all over. Like, I think the reason that the Blake Stewart comes to mind here with him is he's just doing everything, which is something you want at safety. But yeah, I agree. I know the speed is going to be the question at corner. I think safety from a speed standpoint is a better fit, and also just from an instincts fit. He's tackling well. Here you see him coming up. I mean, nice.
That was the best play I've seen, honestly.
Yeah, this guy can tackle. He can turn. He can turn. He definitely looks like he knows what's going on. We're just watching highlights, but I like the fact that when you're on a big program like this and they're saying, hey, you're taking snaps, you're taking handoffs, you're catching balls, we're putting the ball in your hands, that tells me this is a big-time athlete there. And does show some nice speed right there to get to the pylon. So, yeah, this is an eight to keep an eye on, man. Pete, just what do you think in general about Harris and Etheridge? It seems to me like a concerted effort to get into these southern big cities, because we weren't doing this before at this level until these guys got here. As far as like just every Atlanta defensive back, we're on them.
Yeah, I think it's a great area to recruit. I think in general, Harris and Etheridge, we have to enjoy the time that we have with them, because I see them eventually move, as any coach, moving up and on. I hope they're locked in now. It looks like the NFL is still making some hires here. So I don't want to say that they're 100% locked in, but obviously have done great work here.
There you see him blitzing. This guy's just, I think with this guy, Pete, watching him, it's not a guy that you watch two clips and you're like, this guy's just a freak athlete that, is a no-brainer. I think the more you watch this guy play, you see him just look at that right there. You see the instincts, picking up the right guy, just making good decisions, making football plays all over. I think this is the kind of guy where it's not Sean Taylor. You watch two clips, and you're like, this guy athletically and size-wise is just next level. I see this guy as more of just, hey, you watch this guy play the game of football. He's always making the right play. He's physical. He's coordinated. He's smooth. He knows what he's doing out there. That's the impression I'm getting watching this clip, as opposed to like, hey, one play and this guy is just dusting guys because he runs a 10.5.
Yeah, I'm trying to see how fast he is, and it's hard to tell sometimes off high school tape, but that's continues going to be my biggest thing there. But hey, top 100 guys, so
yes, that top 75.
Yeah, it's not this is not like a sleeper player whatsoever. I'm just watching and observing. That's all.
So Juan Manuel saying, is it me or is Georgia letting a lot of guys get out of state? DJ Jacobs, Miami finished second to Ohio State. Georgia wasn't even in that picture. One of the best players in Atlanta, probably actually the best player in Atlanta. Miami will still be in that recruitment, by the way. I think what's happening with Georgia is money. They're just not spending as much as some other teams. I think they're one of those teams that thinks that this cap is real. Of course, it's not. None of it's real. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss, look at them truck that dude. Trinidad Chambliss just got another year.
I have heard, though, that Georgia's about to start spending more money at the high school level through the grapevine, D. So keep an eye out on that.
Look, they should. Certain positions you just got to spend. Georgia was spending a lot of money at the high school level before it was legal. It's a smart thing to spend money at. Jalen Carter, those kind of guys, Nolan Smith, make a difference. Georgia didn't have those guys this year. I thought Georgia's talent this year was very, very subpar by Georgia standards. I did not think I know they were the SEC champion with some weird tiebreaker. I personally thought they were not even definitely not a top 2 team in the SEC. Maybe not even, I guess to put them third in the SEC, put Texas A&M number 1, put Ole Miss number 2. But Georgia was really not a team that blew me away. I think they need to start recruiting Georgia, or else they're going to have a problem. So, we'll see where that one goes, but name to keep your eye on for the Canes, KJ Caldwell. So That's what we got, man. 1 hour, 28 minutes. We've been rolling over 1,000 on the show. Remember to like and subscribe. Remember, if you're heading over to the light, or if you need a late Valentine's Day gift, go to the Miami Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHTS.com. Promo code INSIGHT20 will get you 20% off your first item. Celebrate the gifts with your favorite fan for the Valentine's Day sale, or you could just go grab some Canes baseball gear. I like that baseball shirt. I might get this one with the ball here before the game. Today, Miami Hurricanes baseball in full swing starting today. MiamiHTS.com, promo code INSIGHT20 gets you 20% off your first item. Appreciate
Thank
you,
you,
man.
Manny, for your support. Still waiting for my boy Harley's Joker to come in and tell me what the clickbait was, D. Maybe he baited me. He baited me. He rage baited me.
He baited you. You got baited.
He won the mog, after all.
Remember to like and subscribe to the show.
I'll be back this afternoon, by the way, guys, 3 p.m. for Canes Insight PM. So stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for Canes Insight PM. I like the little PM you put on the thumbnail. Let them know.
Yeah, you like that?
A little detail. Remember, like and subscribe to the show. See Pete at 3. See me at the light. Go Canes.
Go Canes.